Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and I'm joined by my brother, the Gritty Broman. How are you, Brent?
I'm well, thank you.
On today's podcast, it's basically part 4 of a 4-part series we recorded.
It's the final Bear Camp pod.
Yeah, that we recorded on our first series of bear hunts, and it's myself, James Sylvester, and Ryan Lampers, and the three of us. If you've been following along on our YouTube channel, we've been putting out the videos. We've put 3 videos out now. We have a 4th one coming out on Sunday. And as soon as we finished the hunt, we sat down and recorded this particular podcast episode. So this podcast episode's coming out a little before the film comes out, the final film of the series. And I think you'll all like it. It's a much more in-depth show, longer show than the previous shows we recorded. In fact, we thought there was only 3 shows when I came home.
Yeah, so
but there's actually
Ryan told me there was 3, and so but it was super long, and I was like, man, they must have gone on for like a 3-hour long podcast at one point. Messy.
Everything got a little confusing, but it turned out that
There's 4.
there's 4 shows, and I somehow it was a blur. It was a lot of things going on. So this episode's really useful. I think you're gonna like it, and if you haven't seen the films, check them out. We're getting a lot of really positive reviews. And if you have seen the film and you like it, share it with your friends. Hit the like button and leave a comment.
This one's good because you actually get to hear from Sly a little bit. He actually
chimes in, and Sly opens up quite a bit.
Yeah.
As on film as well as on the podcast as the week progresses. And so it's good stuff. We talk about gear, and I think we talk about lessons learned, kind of how we might do it differently.
It's been a long time since you recorded it, and it's been a while since I edited it.
Yeah. So here you go, folks.
It's about gear and bear hunting.
Yeah, I think you're gonna enjoy it. But before we get into the show, I want to remind you to help us out by using the code GRITTY at Mountain Ops. Also, we cover in this podcast the alpaca rafts, and if you use the code GRITTY2020, you get 10% off an alpaca raft. And we actually talk about our experience with the rafts, because Ryan, we get into it in the podcast. I'm fairly certain, where we talk about the mule raft versus the caribou. And the caribou is 2 pounds lighter than the mule. And we actually talk about somewhere in these podcasts that we think the caribou is the way to go, because for bear and for deer, you don't need anything that carries more capacity. It's not worth the extra 2 pounds. You don't need the extra carrying capacity. That said, we were warned by Alpaca Raft that the material is not as robust, so it's not as tough. And so if you're hitting some whitewater or rough stuff, it could.
But if you're just using to ferry across some rivers.
Yeah, well, here's the thing though. Ryan and we have another bear series we're launching back to back off of this one. So we have the next 4 to 5 weeks. Every Sunday, you're going to have a new film.
You're welcome.
It was awesome. We had a blast creating it, doing the hunt, and then sharing it with you. But this time we're in some grizzly country, and it gets a little sketchy.
A little.
And this footage is cool. I think people are going to really enjoy following along with this second series. This time it's just Ryan and I. We didn't have Sly along. No James. And we floated a long ways with our bear meat. And Ryan, we went through some serious sketchy water. Rapids, rocks, like some gnarly stuff. And the caribou did just fine. So we want to take that caribou, load it down stupid heavy, and in a more controlled situation,
Try and sink it.
And see what kind of abuse it can take.
Actually wear a life vest this time.
Because we're working on that. We tied some air mattresses to our waists this time. And
just in case.
We're looking at some life vests that are about a pound. Alpaca Raft sells those. And if you have the Alpaca Raft, the caribou, your paddle, and your vest, your life vest, you're about a 7-pound total weight setup. Now, if you go with the mule, you're like 9 pounds. You're starting to get up there. 7 pounds is not too bad. 8, 9, 10. You're starting to get a little heavy. And but we hiked in crazy miles on that second bear series that you haven't seen yet. And on that hunt, we go pretty deep, and it was worth it because when you can pack out 120, 30 pound pack by floating it, all that meat plus your camp, it's a game changer. It was amazing. We tried to find some places where we could hike in and float out, and it was the coolest. I want to do a whole bunch of hunts like that because you get to your remote where no one else is going. But how often in my life have I been able to go remote and then shirk the responsibility of actually carrying out a stupid heavy pack? And that's what it felt like. I felt like I was cheating. I felt like it was better than horses. And the water's spraying on you, and you're just drifting down the river and paddling. And we paddled for a couple of hours and covered like 15 miles.
Then you're going to feed the boats when you're done.
And I was like, what if we had to walk that 15 miles? Which is what we'd normally do. It seemed like cheating. It was pretty cool. So, folks, check out Alpaca Rafts. Also, seek outside for all your shelter and stove needs. We use the Cimarron. I like the dynamic human fiber. I talked about that. But I also like the U-turn stove. It's like a sub 2.5 pound setup.
Yep.
Fit 2 guys in there. You're each carrying a pound and a half or something.
It's nothing.
Less than that. It's pretty amazing. But if you're on a budget, and I understand that, you should try going for probably the Silex or the Eolus. But the Silex with a stove jack and a smaller U-turn puts you in the same weight range. And it can be a 2-man. It's just not quite as big as a teepee. But you can get that in sil nylon, which then saves you. It's like $200 for that shelter. But you still have that mass weight savings, comfortable shelter, zipperless entry, sets up with your trekking poles. It's pretty cool. And then you should always use sissy sticks, trekking poles. And if you use the code GRITTY, you save on trekking poles too. And use the code GRITTY at Heather's Choice. Packaroons and backcountry meals, we smash those. And there's a couple new things I used on these last hunts. One of them was the goat knives, goatknives.com.
Yep, those are cool.
They're super cool. They're a lot like my Taito knife or like a Havalon replaceable blade, but the goat knife is super lightweight. I think it's titanium. It is.
It's pretty long. I like how
long it is too, and you can get in there and scalpel
it's
skin.
It's much more scalpel than like you're using like a finger length blade. And
it has like little Allen key whole adjustment. So it comes with a bunch of Allen keys, and you can then those go into the handle of the knife, skeleton handle. It's super lightweight. You got to check it out. It's goatknives.com. And if you use the code GRITTYGOAT, then you save some money, and helps us out too. Get a good discount on that knife. And it's really, I love it. I think it's the best replaceable blade knife that I've used thus far. It does have a little sheath that comes with it and some other things. But it really is, you really are looking at something that has been well thought out, and has multi-use in the field. And so Ryan and I use those a bunch. You got to check that out. And another thing was the Mountain Ops.
The Merino?
No, I did use the Merino. I talked about that on another show, which they still don't have it out as far as I know yet.
Soon.
But I love that for sure.
They did come out with the bars.
But the protein bars. I ate one every day on my last hunt, and I had the peanut butter crunch or whatever, or the caramel bliss, and there's the
You totally
chocolate,
mix those two flavors.
Whatever. All I know is the peanut butter and the caramel.
It's Conquer caramel.
Okay.
And then it's peanut butter bliss. And then it's chocolate trash. No one cares.
So my favorite is the peanut butter. You can't go wrong with peanut butter. Yep. And they're actually real tasty. They're more like a Snickers bar when it comes to like pleasure.
Yeah, they're definitely they're tasty.
But they have quite a bit of they got quite a bit of protein in them, and a few other things, and they were a nice treat on the mountain. Better than packing a Snickers with you. So I really did like those. And then before we go, you got to check out Graxaw game bags. Those you can get a discount on those as well, but you're talking about 6 ounces for a little set of game bags that fit in the palm of your hand. They weigh almost nothing, and you can pack out a whole bear in those things. You can see them on the film Ryan and I, we love those bags. We use them a lot. You have to be careful not to puncture them because they are super thin and lightweight, but
they're not meant to handle sharp bones or any bone really.
But as you can see, we've beat the crap out of them using, as long as we're careful with them.
Then you just go home and wash them.
And what I like about them is just that very thing. It's like, I hate packing game bags. I hate it because game bags weigh a whole bunch. Like it's like 6 pillowcases, and I don't want that. So these game bags, they do the job. They let it breathe. You can hang it. You can see in the video, we hang it all the time by the rope. They're very strong.
Yeah, I'm surprised how strong those little strings are.
So you fill those things with meat all the way. You hang it. They're stitched. They're super strong, and you wash them. You reuse them, and they last forever.
Anytime.
The only weakness is the puncture. Yep. But you got it. So you got to pay the lightweight fare somewhere.
Yes.
And it's worth the dealing with that for the benefit that you get, in my opinion.
You have mandatory gear you have to take. And if you can get that lightweight fairy to come along and bless that mandatory gear into a cheaper fashion, it's good.
Well, a lot of people have asked why I'm using the 6.5 RPM instead of a 300. And the lightest weight 6.5 RPM compared to the lightest weight 300 that I could get my hands on, there's a pound difference. That's it. There's a pound. If I go with my Weatherby 300 in the backcountry, the Mark V backcountry TI lightweight gun, it's a pound heavier just because of the round. And so what Ryan and I wanted to find out was, okay, well, how does the 6.5 RPM stack up? How does it handle a black bear hunt?
And if you watch the bear videos this season, you'll know.
Yeah, it just lays them down. It has laid them down. So it's not going to do what a 300 Win Mag does, but you watch it just every animal that's hit with those it's like their eyes, it's like they're just like rocked. It surprises me. And then some have like laid there and kind of twitched a little bit and like they're so dazed and then it takes a second and then they expire. Where sometimes with my 300, I've hit stuff and it's just done. Yeah. There's instantaneous shattered spine or whatever, just the hydrostatic shock or something. But both guns the 6.5 has shown me that it's absolutely devastatingly lethal. And for that pound difference, I'm not seeing really what I'm getting out of that extra pound now that I've tested the 6.5 RPM. Now, that's on a black bear. I haven't put it on a deer. I haven't put it on an elk. I haven't put it on other animals. I don't quite know if I will put it on an elk. These are things I'm still figuring out.
Bears are pretty soft.
But they're tough.
They're tough.
If you hit a bear in a marginal area, a shoulder, a butt, someplace, even with a 300, bears have so much muscle and so little bone, really, so in that sense, they are soft. But if you don't hit a vital organ or a vital lung area, a bear seems to be able to go forever. Like wounded.
Old black bears walk around like ancient fat men.
Yeah.
They're hilarious. They don't bend knees. They just swing legs.
You really get a good view on this Sunday's upcoming movie that hasn't come out yet. This podcast is coming out before the movie does. You really get a good view of an old bear, and its legs don't bend.
Its back legs never bend once.
They're just straight leg, pole legs, and they just like waddle.
Throw hips around.
And that's when you know it's a big bear. They got that big bear swagger. They're older. Their teeth are all worn down. It's pretty cool to see. Bears are tricky to judge. In this next video, spoiler alert, the bear it wallows. It gets soaking wet.
Hold on. You guys had a choice between that bear and another.
Yeah, we had a couple bears
And Ryan picked the one, and I quote, "That bear's got swagger. Let's go."
Yeah. And it's true. It had, but once it gets wet, it looks small because it looks like a wet dog. Yeah. It doesn't look small if you know what you're looking at.
Yeah.
But
it was wallowing and then going down, eating,
rolling in the mud.
Wallow.
And when it's wet and soaking wet, it's like a big fluffy dog that then gets soaking wet. You're just like, that looks different.
They just don't look impressive after that.
But when he shakes,
And
all
his
the water
hair
falls off and it just stands straight back up again.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty wild. Anyway, I think you're going to really enjoy that. I hope you've been enjoying the series. Anyway, that's it. We're rambling on. Hope you enjoy this podcast. Let us know. Leave a comment below if you're on YouTube. And thanks for tuning in. Stay gritty. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and I am coming at you from the trailhead, from Bear Camp. We're in the truck here, the Gritty truck, and I keep itching everywhere because I think I might have a tick somewhere embedded or trying to embed in my body right now.
Yeah.
In fact, about an hour ago, as we got back, did one last inspection, and James saved the day. Pulled one out of my armpit before it could dig in.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it was a tick because we've been checking pretty good, but there it was.
Then at that, when I freaked out and dropped my drawers, and there was one going into my leg. So,
yep, I ended up doing a double check on myself as well. Luckily, I didn't have any, though.
I have too much dignity to let you check below the waist, so I went and got a mirror and a flashlight and checked every little crevice.
I have too much dignity to check for you.
So, for those that have been following along, this is our wrap up of our bear hunt. And last time we left you, we had one bear, right?
Yeah.
One bear.
We had taken down that beautiful blonde.
Yeah.
And off a cliff.
And today, for those who haven't been following along, I've got Ryan Lampers here, stealthy hunter, and we've got James Sylvester, photographer extraordinaire.
Slash. What is he? Half Sherpa?
Yeah. What were we going to call his photo business?
Rainbow
sunset. Rainbows and sunsets.
That won't work.
Yeah, it needs to be more, I guess rugged but artsy at the same time. Is that what you're going for, James?
Yeah, I think we'll just stick to Sylvester photography.
It's hard to lose with the name Sylvester.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, I like that name.
Especially when your IG is Sly Sylvester.
Sly Sylvester. If you haven't checked out James's Instagram page, you should. You can see his talent on this full display there.
Yeah, he's our photographer extraordinaire plus half Sherpa. He's half of each. He can haul some weight as well, so very fortunate to have
right
him.
there among the nicest humans I've ever met. James, thanks for coming along.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you. Same to you guys as well. I really appreciate going on these trips.
I mean, as I've gotten to know you, it's obvious that you're related to Ryan through marriage.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not as overly nice as James is. Always happy, always smiling.
Always smiling.
He's got something nice to say.
Yep.
I don't get it.
It's awesome.
It's annoying.
Well, let's get into the adventure here because we wrapped up 4 bears in about 10 days.
Yeah. Yep. 10, 11 days. Took us a while.
Hard hunting.
This was no chip shot.
So we have 3 bears to talk about here.
We do. This could go a while.
Yeah, I don't want to go into too much detail because I want people to watch the videos.
Right.
So I don't want to give it away.
Cliff Notes version.
Yeah.
But, oh, man, what a trip. It had everything you could hope for, really. We weren't finding 2 bears in a basin. We weren't killing 3 bears in 30 minutes. We had none of that. We had several days in between bear sightings and a lot of miles and a crud ton of elevation between bear sightings. So this was tough. And I think you and I have kind of figured out a lot of that had to do with the time of year. Mm-hmm. For those that have watched last year's, we were definitely more mid-May.
Yes.
Everything was green. Most of the bears were out and about, so you could see them. This time, we started off brown.
Yeah.
Brown ground, no green whatsoever. And by the end, things were a foot tall. Flowers everywhere. And so we kind of got the rivers were low. The creeks were not raging, if there at all. And then by the end, they were ripping.
We've talked to a few people. The game warden came out and, pulled the teeth on our bear and sealed them up. And so we can take them home, inspected them. And the word is perhaps as much as 50% of the bears are still denned up.
Yeah.
In the first week, perhaps as much as we were only looking at 25%
maybe, yeah,
of the bears out.
Yep.
So it was,
and we kind of knew going in, right? Like we knew it was going to be. In fact, we dropped our dates because of the COVID thing. We had some time. We dumped our dates back. We were going to go a little later, but we knew going in earlier we were going to have a lot more challenges, probably see a lot less, and have to work a heck of a lot harder to find bears.
I was really curious what it was going to be like, and I feel so much like now I kind of know what a mid-April to late is like, you know?
Yeah.
The flowers were just starting to pop, you know, come out.
Yeah, when we got there, it was just absolutely nothing. Like a little, like way low, a little bit of a sheen of green starting, like quarter inch. And by the end, it felt like we were in meadows of green. Still has a lot to come, but
I wasn't sure what I was expecting. Maybe to find a bear in a den.
Yeah. We hope to, like, see some tracks on one of those tops in the snow. That'd be the ultimate, but it did not happen.
Although we do think we did find one that was either going into a den or some kind of bedding spot.
I think there's I don't think there's any doubt that one was in a den.
Yeah,
that was old Cinnamon, and he disappeared. He kind of spooked, like there was something above him. We were looking for another bear. And then he kind of went up into these rocks and he disappeared. And we were actually trying to get a better vantage on him. And even with the better vantage around that rim, we couldn't see anything. Then we saw him later. He popped up and he disappeared in that same hole. So had to be a den. And he was up at Snowline.
Way up there.
Yep.
Yeah. So we were stuck at a base camp for a day or so in the pouring rain, which was when we did the last podcast. Then we got out of there, and thankfully the next day we got into a bear, which we spotted pretty high up.
Yeah.
And
almost 2 miles away.
And this bear, he's a giant. He's a big bear. Teeth missing. It was pretty gnarly. We hit a stock on that, and people can watch the video of that. And we got the bear, but it was a sleeping bear.
It was a sleeping giant. Yeah, what a bear. Just a tank. And it's pretty cool stock how it all went down, where we lost him for a while and we thought we found him. Ended up being a sow with a little cub popped up too. So,
which we bumped into her throughout the day.
Yeah,
on different mountains.
Way far away from where we first saw her. But and then we happened to relocate old giant there, and he went to sleep on us, and we ended up making a killer stock again, way down into a creek, bust through that scrub, and then way up. Yeah. And that bear was pretty high elevation where he was, but he had a great spot. Little snow melt, a little green patch against a cliff.
Little water trickle coming down the hill there.
Yeah, and he found just a nice soft spot to bed up.
It seemed like mostly everywhere we got into a bear, it was kind of held up, or it was at least down where there was an ample amount of water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We didn't really find many bears that were in the arid areas.
Not at all.
Like we found later in May.
Yeah, we kind of at the end there, we thought we found one in a pretty arid area.
Probably still in the den, though.
Well, I mean, that last one.
Oh, yeah.
But come to find out, there was water just right there. A big old bear wallow. So.
Yeah. We got a bear. So, spoiler alert, like, Ryan shot a bear, and it fell 200 feet off a cliff. And that was wild. But turned out that everything was intact and just fine.
Didn't have a meat bruise, nothing. As far as the hide goes, nothing wrong with it at all.
No broken bones, as far as we could tell.
Nope. A couple scuffs on the nose, and that was it.
So, and then one thing I wanted to get into was something that helped us basically get 2 bears, even 3 bears, actually. 3 bears was that predator call.
Mm-hmm.
So, for those that are listening, I mean, it really did it made it possible for us to get at least the seconds we needed to get a shot. So talk to people a little bit about the predator call and the first time, second time, third time we used it, because we only didn't use it on one bear.
Right. So the first time was just a really long drug out stalk. on bear number 1. Every time we would crest a ridge, we'd see his rump going over the next one, and we'd have to bust down through the scrub and up and over. And even at the very end, when we got in position, it just happened so fast. We kind of knew this bear was in this hole, and he had to come out. He had to go either up or he had to go across. And he went across, and he just had a way of keeping his butt right at us and no shot. And so, I always have that predator call around my neck. And so squealing and screaming on that thing just to get him to turn to give me a broadside shot.
Because he was like 225 or something.
Yep.
And his
225
butt
yards.
was facing you for the third time.
And there was no real beyond where we were at that point. He got over that next hump. He was probably gone forever.
Disappeared.
And so I started screaming, and and it just gave him, he turned obviously right away, looked, and he gave me that nice quartering away shot. So, bear number 2, kind of a fun little way to use it on that one. We had this giant, just sleeping bear, sawing logs, sound asleep.
Yeah, who knows how long.
Just dead to the world. He'd get up and he'd like scratch his head and then just flop down like with all his weight right back down into that padded moss. And so that one, we were all set up, and you were on the rifle. And so we figured, well, we may be here all day. Let's just get him up.
Mm-hmm. And the wind could change.
Yeah.
Just,
So I woke him up with that screaming predator call again, and you just hammered him. So it was a great way to use it there. And then, the next bear, we saw that bear. You spotted him up this drainage, and we got into position where we thought he was going to come out, and he kind of juked us and went up instead of came down. He did go to the side we figured he would, but in the process, he went and he kind of went over this ridge, and the only way, it's getting late in the day, we don't have much time. The only way we can pursue this bear is to go down into the bottom and then just cruise up, hoping we're going to see him on the side. And so we're cruising, and we just happen to get to a spot where there's a rise. And sure enough, he's right on the other side. Like, we're poking our heads over. He sees us. We see him. He starts booking it. And so I start screaming on that predator call, and it stopped him, and he ran up a tree. And that's where...
which was wild. Like he runs into... There's nowhere to go except there's the cluster of 2 trees.
Yep. Or he was out of our lives forever if he would have just booked it.
If he just kept going, right
up valley, yeah.
And so imagine we're watching this bear run, and when we see him running, he's like 30 yards to our left.
He's
maybe?
just this big old
and then you
shimmy
see
shake.
His fat butt is just like he's hauling as fast as he can, but he's looking back at us and running forward like trying to get out of there. And you got that predator call going right off the bat, and for whatever reason,
just parked it.
He decided to climb
the tree and parked it on a branch. I don't know,
8 feet.
8 feet up is all. And he got a nice little perch there to kind of look at what we were. And I kept him occupied while we could get set up, screaming. And I think more than anything, it just kind of confused him, but and kept him there. And then
it was a fiasco.
And then I laid off of the call, and folks will see the video, I guess, but it was pretty cool.
So it came in very handy on the last bear. Yeah. You were on the rifle, and it was a possibility to use it there.
Could have almost. I had it
probably
right at the ready because he was in some scrub and he was busting brush all over, and like I said, he was in a wallow. And if he wouldn't have came out of there, we probably could have got him out of there if we needed to. But
I think he'd have come out and peeked over the ridge.
He would have. He'd have been curious.
But why risk it? Because you can make an animal leave.
Yeah, and he just came right on his own. So, nice close shot. I don't know how far the shot was, 80 yards or something like that.
So it took 10, 11 days to get 4 bears this time of year. And we covered, what did we say? It was about 15 miles as a crow flies.
Between my first bear and my last bear.
That's how much ground
we took a couple in between. But big distances. And, the distance is one thing, but more than anything, in the type of terrain we were in, it's the up-downs. Up to the top, looking back down, hope to see something that you can go for at the bottom. Because they're spending most of their time down in those bottoms where there's a little bit of food. So that was kind of our plan. is get up so you can look down. And when that's your plan and that's what you have to do, you got to crush those hills and no complaints. It's like 1,000 feet up, 2,000 feet up, get up there and then blast down. And I don't know how many hills we ended up stomping, but it would have been cool to keep track of just the elevation gained.
I thought I could do a little math for the film.
Yeah, it's got to be a lot.
And just kind of do a conservative guess, but it was a lot. I mean, it was much more than last year.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, last year we had the benefit of one basin just happened to have 3 bears in it. So
and
3 of the 5 came out of one drainage.
You could really camp in a salad bowl, and it's like you're almost guaranteed a bear will come in. Right now, that was not the case.
Not the case with this time frame. I think later into May, Yep, you could count on that. You could spend your time just relaxing, waiting for a bear to come in. Or you just get real aggressive and go find your bear. And that's kind of what we had to do on this one to make it work.
We were quite patient, over a basin or a drainage where we worked on it like a day, sometimes 2 days.
Yeah. On
the same drainage, just going, okay, there's got to be a bear in here.
Yeah.
But when there wasn't, we weren't afraid to just march off to another area.
Yeah. And, there's a lot of time, we're figuring about 3 days or so between bears, but there's a lot of time of marching. Like there's a lot of time in between where you're either crossing creeks or rivers or stomping up mountains, which takes a long time. I think I figured we hit 5 X's that we wanted to look at that we had kind of picked out ahead of time.
But they were
4 of them panned out, but they were way far apart and they're unique in a certain way. There was a reason to look at them. And, 4 of the 5 panned out. They weren't loaded, weren't seeing a lot of bears, but they had one.
Bears are so different than deer or elk as well, where bears aren't like looking over their shoulder all the time. They don't really care if they wander into the open or if they stay under cover.
Right.
In general, especially the big bears, they just do what bears do, wander. So in general, if we're in a drainage and we don't see a bear in there,
what's our saying now? What's your saying? Like
the more we look and glass a drainage and we don't see a bear, the more I think there's not bears there. It's deep.
It is deep for sure. Yeah.
There's some truth there, right?
It's true. Well, that's the thing. Like bears stick out. They pop. Like you see one, you're like, oh, you cannot miss it. There's obviously when there's a sleeping bear, we could easily miss that one.
Or one that's staying in a thick timber bottom.
Or he's just not moving. He's hunkered down, bedded, or just sitting there. But
you're not going to find that bear anyway.
When they're walking, they are shining off the mountain. So you figure if there's one in there and you spend enough time there, they got to move around a little bit. Gonna see that bear. You're gonna see it.
And the sow and cubs prove that. We would sit there and we'd spot a sow and a cub, or sow with 3 cubs.
Yep.
And in the course of a day, they would just they'd be all over. You'd see them all day.
You're just always picking them up.
And you're like, man, if there's a boar in here,
oh yeah,
you just would have seen it.
Yep.
And I think hearing from some of the guys that have hunted this early who feel like they're like, we went to a couple areas and never saw a bear. I think that it's probably true because there wasn't a bear there. And that's where you got to burn the boot leather.
Absolutely. Yeah, this wasn't an easy hunt by any stretch. It's about as hard as you could make a hunt. As far as miles, weight, packing them back, just really, really difficult. And very few animals. We're not getting glass on a ton of bears.
Yeah. But man, when you find one, it's really cool because we averaged like seeing a bear every 3 to 4 days or 3-ish. 3 days.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
And that's tough to go full days without seeing something.
Yeah.
You start to...
We got 3 sets of glass on the mountain. James glasses as well, and you and I. So we're covering a lot of country, putting who knows how many hours of time glassing each spot. So yeah, no, it's a lot of time and a lot of area covered when you're going days between even just seeing a bear. No doubt.
And I think later in the year, as May proved for us last time, that it can be glorious. Like there's a lot of critters. This time, we saw a few.
What I take out of this was a big win, though, I think, because we knew, like I said in the beginning, this is a trip that was going to be difficult because of the time frame. Was not going to be, there's just not as many bears out. Like you mentioned, where are we at? Maybe 50% of the bears are out right now.
Yeah.
But, I think going through like everything that we did just made this trip like incredible. Like it was perfect. Started out, like I said, it started off brown. Like, how are we ever going to find a bear in this massive country? And very few bears were out. And then all of a sudden, we find one, and then there's just massive time in between. And then slowly but surely we cover enough ground to where we find one more. And no, it was just really cool. About as adventurous as you could make or hope for in a big trip like that.
Right. In the rapids, we were able to cross a couple areas up to our knees or so, thighs. And then later it's treacherous, like swollen rivers.
Right. Yeah. No, totally changed. We're
Snow's melting.
Right smack in the middle of spring runoff right now. In the beginning, it was like winter low water.
In fact, we got to our first area and there was all the snow. And 3 days later, our snow was gone.
Right.
Like
and we were
on the top.
We were parked up on this, way, way up on that ridge. And we couldn't have been there if that snow wouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
Because water was 2,000 feet below us. And by the end, our snow patch was
that one
dwindling.
Day, I swear it receded like 6 feet from where it was the day before.
Right. No, well, it's just a great time to be out. It's cool. I mean, we got to see a lot of other stuff too. The grouse are thumping like crazy right now. I think we got a lot of pics and video of, males doing their thing. It's a great time to be out in the woods.
One of the things that always comes up often is the deal with the meat and the hides and so forth, because the heat. You shot your bear and it basically, how long? Like more than a week.
Week and a half,
where it just aged and hung.
It just hung. So, what was great about that is, in the beginning we had some real cold nights. So, shot that bear, frozen nights, got it chilled immediately, which is the most important. And we got a nice crust going up on that windy ridge. And then after that, we packed it down and just basically put it in an area that never saw sun. It was always shaded, which knocks a ton of degrees off. Even on those days where it's 60, 65 degrees, you park that thing in the shade and it's way less. So, that long between bears, come back, bear meat is fantastic. It's just in perfect shape. It's just like it's been dry aging in my garage.
Yeah.
So that was it. It was real easy. I'm going to just get that crust going. And
mine hung for more than a week. I took my bear, hung it up in a tree and on the separate game bags. The hides we both put into big, giant, like cotton.
Yep.
Game bags, sealed those up, hung them, and everything stayed cool in the shade. Now we're talking 40 to 50 degrees at night, somewhere in that span. It's a lot easier to keep our stuff from going bad this time of year than it was
when it's
last
70
year.
Plus.
It was rough last year.
Yeah, we were having a hard time just keeping it out of the sun in the place we were at, But it's pretty important to find that tree that just keeps shade throughout the day.
I also think if you're going to keep a hide, having those big cotton bags was nice because at night, generally,
it's not sweating. Like if you just hang it in the hair would have slipped, no doubt. If I'd have just hung that in like a trash bag or something, it would have been toast.
Yep.
But no, that cotton really allowed it to keep breathing and keep cool.
So
throughout the night,
especially when it's cooled on the skin side, not the hair side, overnight. Then you roll it up while it's still cold, and you toss it inside the bag, and it insulates itself to stay cold. Yeah. So even though the fur side is getting some heat, that inside is still hot or still cold from the night before.
Right.
When I pulled mine off, it was there over a week, and it was in the sun at one part of the day. It's the only tree we could find, and yet when I pulled that thing out in the hot part of the day and rolled it out, it was ice cold inside.
Yeah, it's almost like its own built-in. It's like a sleeping bag trick, using it for its own insulation. So,
no, it was initial cool is critical.
Yeah, getting that, like laying that hide out hopefully you have a dry night when you first get that thing, and you can get it laid out and just get that thing tacky dry.
Yep.
You know, when you put the skin to skin, you're hoping it's not wet at any point. It's just bone dry. And then you do that and you roll it up nice and tight, like a sleeping bag roll, and then hang it. Boy, say a week and a half. And it's
perfect condition.
Perfect condition.
No blow on it because it was in the cotton bags,
right.
Which we struggled with last time.
Tie your top knots real good so bugs aren't getting down in there. Very important.
And everything that got a crust on it, even a couple of my game bags had something pecked at it and put little holes in it, like a bird or something, I guess.
Right. Yeah, like I had like fly blow on the outside of those Graxol bags.
Yeah.
Nothing got inside. Like nothing. There's just on the outside, and that's all they could do. So.
Yeah. I just got it on the outside, but I could, even if they went in and laid some inside, the crust is so hard at this point that, it just brushes off. It's got that nice protective layer. But we went on the second leg of this trip, and I gave you one of my cotton bags for your hide, and I used up my bags. I had a bunch of reusables that my wife washed for me, but I didn't really inspect them, and they had a few holes.
Right.
And so, I used them all last year for like elk, deer, and the bear. I mean, I put them through the paces, and so there was a couple of holes in a couple of them, and I'm like, I can't really use these just to hang, and I left my other bags up at the camp, so I was out there without game bags.
Right.
And you were like, you got your game bags? And I'm like, oh no. Because we're 8 or 9 miles from.
Yeah. Yeah. Immediately I'm like thinking, how is this going to work? Because, no game bags, bear down. What are we going to do here?
And we're so far in, we want to hit 2 more drainages, and we have another bear tag to fill.
Right.
We can't afford to spend time going all the way back.
Right.
To try to get back to this new ground again. So I always bring those heavy, the thickest mill garbage bags, contractor bags.
Yep.
And a lot of people think they have thick garbage bags, but they don't. Like you can get the real heavy, thick ones at
at least at least a 45 gallon, or 55 gallon, real heavy, thick stuff. Mm-hmm. That's really the only one that's going to keep the water out.
And I usually use it to line my bag,
right,
just to keep blood out of it, because I don't like to use a meat shelf kind of thing. I can, but it's so convenient just to line my backpack, drop it in there, and everything with the, stays clean in just within those heavy duty bags. Well, I was able to put the meat in the bag and 3/4 in that bag, plus partial other quarter because it had been shot, and then threw in the back straps and all the parts in that big bag, and then I just kind of twisted it and duct taped the top, and then set it in the creek and stacked a pile of rocks on it.
Right.
And that night it sat out in the wide open and cooled. No flies because it was so cold. And it got a little bit of a crust, not as much as I wanted, but something. And then I put it in those bags and dumped it in the creek, and that creek is like snowy, ice cold.
Yeah. Put your toes numb real quick.
So we left that meat. The only thing that worried me about it was that something would get into it, because it's not hanging from a tree now, out on a limb pretty far where a bear can't get to it. Right. So it is in plastic and it is submerged mostly. And so the odds of something smelling it and getting to it are lower, but that was my one concern. But I've done that with elk a bunch of times in really hot temps in like Hell's Canyon areas, and where it's just scalding. And if you have an ice cold little creek, you set it in there, it's like a refrigerator, man. And
Absolutely.
So we left it in there as long as it's ice cold like that, especially because it's heat and moisture that's your problem.
Yep.
And so I still had moisture, I just didn't have the heat.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kept
initial, like the most important is that first night.
Yeah.
Getting it a little bit of a crust to it and completely cooling it off.
Yeah, you should
Without
never.
that, and you don't throw it in a game bag or even put it in the creek.
No, it'll trap the heat inside that thing and then really accelerate the rot. Yeah, having it sit out all night and then putting it in the morning was good. So what I thought was great was us figuring out that it could last, a week and a half just sitting in trees.
Yep.
and in game bags and so on, and it just aged nice and smells perfect. We ate a bunch today.
Yeah, we made some nuggets that were to die for.
It's
This is by far. I mean, there's so many ways. I've like aired a bunch of different ways to cook bear that is enjoyable, right? But there's still nothing beats in a jet boil mini mow on the mountain, rendering down some of the fat. I use some of the caul fat
from my bear.
Yeah, from yours. A little bit of the back fat as well, but and getting about an inch to 2 inches of nice rendered fat, and then just small little chunks of bear meat, dropping them in and just watch them boil,
deep fry,
and it just cooks them so fast and so thorough. And yet there's that weird thing with bear meat, like you couldn't do that with venison or elk even.
Yeah,
it's going to get kind of dry. Bear meat stays nice and moist and tender.
The flavor is
unreal.
It's the fat.
Yeah.
And you sprinkled some little packets of
Tony's seasoning. Yeah.
On there, and we popped those things, and it was just awesome. I love the little rendered pieces of fat because they only render so far, and then it looks like kind of like a, I don't know how,
piece of darkened popcorn.
Yeah, or more like a pork rind.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you use like a real kind of almost a thick back fat, you can do that. When you're using the caul fat, it's so small and wispy, you don't really get those rinds. But when you take a nice hunk, and 2 of our bears were loaded with fat. I mean, the last 2 bears we took had enough fat. You could have got a lot of mason jars filled with rendered fat from those bears. A lot.
Your last bear and my first bear, they're probably the 2 fattest, biggest bears.
Spring bears. Yeah.
The other, really only one of the bears was lean.
The first one had 0 fat.
Yeah.
0 fat. And it was still brown. But I'm guessing he just went to bed last winter skinny.
He had the puffiest coat of all by far.
Yeah.
But he didn't have anything to spare. He was just lean.
What was interesting about that too is when we ended up getting down into his neck of the woods, like where we'd seen him, like he'd been out a while, because we saw some scat, saw some older scat from this year, and I was seeing pad tracks like all over this couple of knobs where we were. So it's not like he just popped out and hadn't gotten a mouthful yet. He was up. He'd been up for a bit,
which had me wondering. When we talked about this, was he out and about because, he just ran out of fat stores?
Because he was skinny and hungry.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But then the other bears were super fat.
Right.
And your last bear had, I think, the most fat. Just 3 inches of fat across his rump and stuff.
Yeah, he looked, I mean, not as much as a fat berry fed fall bear, but he looked like it. I mean, when you took his hindquarter off, I mean, I whittled on it quite a bit to get some of that off of there, some of that fat. I've got some still left on there. I'll still get a few good mason jars full of rendered fat off of this one, and he's a spring bear. So
yeah. And you like to use that rendered fat for your boots.
Yep. Yeah, waterproof the boots up. Did it just before I came on this one again, and works good. It sheds water, and then we use it for baking and stuff like that.
It's like a form of Crisco, from what I understand. It's healthy.
Yeah, but it's got a shelf life that lasts forever. Once you render it, it'll go rancid on you if you don't render it, though, pretty fast.
And by render, you're talking about frying it until
cooking it down,
and then you pull the impurities off of it, strain it maybe.
Yep.
And then you have
and then you just
let it sit at room temperature. It's like bacon grease
for infinity.
Yeah.
Whereas, you take bear fat, and bear fat's got a good flavor, unlike deer fat. It's not got a good flavor.
Tallow
it doesn't hold the flavor well at all, whereas bear fat does. But when you freeze bear fat, even you don't get very long in the freezer before it turns on you.
Yeah.
So when you render it, it's just going to be there forever.
That's why I'm liking the canning of it pretty quickly.
Yep.
As soon as I get it home, chunk it up, can it, because that fat, it's cooked and it ends up tasting.
You see it rise to the top of that, the meat in the mason jar, right?
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's super convenient then too, because I don't have to cook. It's already done.
Yep.
It's like pot roast and instantaneous.
I know. And for anyone who's a little weirded out by trichinosis, I mean, solves that problem right away.
Yep.
So, the way we did it today with the rendered fat as your cooking grease, just dropping the nuggets in there, great way to remove all doubt of trick. It just cooks thoroughly. And then also the canning method, it's just 100% effective for kicking the trick out.
Yeah. It's got such a greasy, like, it's the only game meat where you hang it in a game bag and in a little bit of heat during the day and it cools at night. But over time, the bag just becomes a giant, greasy, slimy, like just greasy, like a.
It gets as greasy as my hippie hair practically after 11 days in the backcountry.
It reminds me of like what the countertops at a McDonald's would be like. You know, just grease on everything before they clean it. You know.
Yeah, probably.
But it gives it all that flavor. It just weeps, you know, as it sits there.
Yeah.
And the hide does the same thing. Just soaks up the cotton, just soaks up all the grease.
Yeah, your game bags are just greasy, waterproof.
And I think a lot of people who say they don't like bear or have had bear, they've maybe treated it like elk or deer, and they get it all cut up, put it in the freezer, and all that fat's just not stable enough as it is uncooked, and it just turns bad and doesn't, and because it's marbled throughout all the meat, it's just not that good.
Right. And I will say till the day I die, like if you like burgers, bun or no bun, like if you love burgers, there is no better burger than ground up bear meat, period.
Yeah.
Burgers are meant to be greasy with a bunch of spicy cheese on the top, Brian. But there is no better meat than a bear burger, or no better way to do a burger than a bear burger.
Yeah.
So, James, what did you think, like, overall, after this massive trip you just took?
Man, I think it was awesome. It was great.
Yeah.
Climbed a lot of peaks, saw a lot of country, and you guys made some pretty epic stocks. You guys are 100% on every stock you guys went on. Yeah, yeah, and the bear meat is fantastic. That bear meat at the end there was really good.
What did you think about the rivers and the river crossings?
I'd rather hike. Yeah, I'm not very versed in like paddling, I guess. So like avoiding rocks and not tipping over was kind of sketchy for me.
Rocks are like magnets to James. I said, James, just
go around that
follow me
rock
through this and just miss that first rock. Whatever, just don't slide up on that. We just take off. You know, the water's ripping, and I look back and James isn't following me. Not at all. He's actually heading right for that rock, and he went in between them and bounced off a few.
Well, the part
it was gnarly, man.
Going sideways, he's like, don't hit the rock sideways. You swamp the boat or it'll tip.
You could tip it.
And your boat filled with water.
It got a little bit of water in there, and it did almost. If I wouldn't have weighted myself right, I think I would have gone over. But yeah, that was the one mistake I made, I think, where it could have cost me.
We've come to the conclusion that with these alpaca rafts, James first needs to get one.
Yeah,
and he needs to take it out into a nice calm lake.
I need to
wind that day,
paddling,
not a breeze.
Yeah,
take it out there,
get
paddle around, get comfortable.
I was thinking maybe like link up our rafts together, and then you could paddle us both across.
Yeah, I heard that idea on the shore. He's like, "Can't you just tie me to your raft?"
Oh man,
I was thinking that could really cause a disaster.
Yeah, it was sketchy though. There was some rough water, so I haven't really spent any time paddling in any type of rivers. So yeah, that was probably the adrenaline rush.
I think it's just like a coordination thing. I think you do it a couple times. And you get it figured out. That was kind of a crash course in that type of water.
Well, there's a few spots where we're dodging rocks.
Right.
You know, you got to get out into the water enough to dodge a giant rock so you don't get sucked into a vortex or tip. And there's a few times where I was like, all right, I'm not going to get past this rock. And so I just turned and went straight into it
onto the side. Yeah.
And your boat can handle that. It'll hit that rapid and it'll take it. But if you go at it sideways, that's the worst.
Water comes in.
Yeah, you could be bumming for sure.
And so there's a couple times where I was like, crap, I'm not going to make it. All right, here we go. And you're just hitting it hard and just going straight through it. And you never want to hit a rapid sideways like that. You always want to be face on if you're going to hit it.
Right.
And
the biggest worry is like some of those rocks, most river rocks are rounded. Like they're smooth, right on the top. They just had enough water go over them. But like I was pointing out to James on our exit, on the first exit across, it's like just don't hit that rock because there's jagged edges on it, right? It's kind of sharp, and if you roll sideways into that rock, you could have some troubles.
Well, because most of the time the water's never deep enough to submerge that rock.
Yeah.
So it's sharp still.
Right. Yeah, it's true.
That was fun, though.
was
I
fun.
enjoyed it. There
It was
a
fun
lot of,
once I was on the other side.
but it was great because the boats are 5 to 7 pounds.
Yep.
So we could bring these things along.
I ran the
drainages.
5-pounder. I ran the Caribou
Yeah.
this trip, and I like it.
I ran the mule.
You got the mule, which carries an extra 100 pounds. It's a little bit bigger.
Could actually fit 2 guys into it if you had to.
Right. So there's advantages to that. I like that little Caribou just because it's 2 pounds less.
Mm-hmm.
And just for a solo guy, you're fine. I mean,
for what we're doing, especially.
We talked about we're so much more comfortable now shoving all our gear inside of that raft. All of it. Like all the meat, and just having your backpack sitting on the top. And
even
empty,
that I could have put inside when I thought about it.
Yeah.
So 100% of your gear is in the hole.
Yep.
So I put a full bear, skulls, hide, all the meat, full bear in there, full camp, full backpack camp. In there. Everything, my boots, everything, because I don't want it to get wet. Everything inside the hole, zip it shut, pump it up, and
once you get everything in there, there's not much to pump up. I mean, it takes very little air.
And you're not carrying that boat at that point. You want it in the water as you're filling it with gear. Right. I got my rifle inside the pontoons.
The
bullets.
The meat is what separates being able to pump it up off of the shore.
Yes.
When you have meat, pump it up like the front half in
the water,
so you can just
slide it in. Camera gear, tripods, big lenses, optics, all that.
Oh, I'm hook, line, and sinker. Like it just makes way too much sense not to put it all in there now. Now there's a little bit of it's a little bit slower. You have to unpack your deal and put it in, but
man, if you swamp it or the water just takes
all
takes
your
in,
gear
just stays dry.
Yeah. Yep.
So
I love that thing. Still, we got a lot of big trips that we will have in the future with those things.
Now, there was one section of our hunt where we hunted upriver from our trailhead, and we were able to put the bear in your boat, so we didn't have to pack it out.
Right.
And you were able to float it almost all the way down to our.
That was the nicest float ever. I watched you guys like huffing and puffing.
We were
and
carrying our
red-faced.
camp.
I was like, man, that must suck.
It's like 5 miles
floating down the river. And I'd stop, just kind of hold myself in place. And man, you guys were slow. I was just going with the speed of the river. It took no time to get down.
It'd probably take you 10 minutes to do what would take us a couple hours. I mean,
it's quick. I love it.
Plus, we were tired and you were just floating.
Yeah.
On that note, though, I think the dry suit would be money because you're going to get wet in this raft because just with the paddling and the size of it.
It gets, just the drips from the paddles. You're going to have a little bit of intake there. And then if you hit certain rapids that are no threat, they're no danger, but water does come in and up and over.
Yeah.
A little bit. Little splashes here and there. And so what I had was those Chota hip boots. They're just like a little Gore-Tex booty. I used to wear those things elk hunting in Washington a lot. And they're great for crossing small rivers or creeks or hunting in swamps, stuff like that. And so you put those things on and that kept my legs completely dry. And when I wanted to hop out, it was easy. I could just kind of cozy up to the side of the riverbank and just get out.
Yeah,
and not have to get my boots wet.
I was barefoot
and freeze my
pants
toes
rolled
off.
up, and I'm like,
Yeah, and you just face it, when the river gets up, there's all that brush, little spiky stuff all along the edge of the river, and that's no fun in bare feet.
I think, though, there's no need for a dry suit, but if you're going to drift a river, float down a whole river for miles like what
100%.
we did, it would be nice, and it doesn't add that much more weight. And then if
it just stays with the boat,
and maybe it's a self-bailing boat as well.
Right.
And then you're king of that river, man.
Absolutely.
You shot a couple gnarly spots, though, which I got on video because I was hoping you'd crash. And so we were filming you shoot a gap, and I was like, this was a little risky.
Yeah, I was confident.
But the pull out, you almost missed.
And
then it got real nasty.
We eyeballed it ahead of time just to see if it was possible. Because I had all my stuff in the raft, all the gear, and there was one little pull-out spot. And if you didn't hit that pullout spot, like after a couple of big boulders, a quick dash across the river,
then
you were going through some hell. Like there's
fallen
some big
logs
stuff
and rocks.
And yeah, I gave it all I had to shoot for that little pullout spot, and yeah, I got it. It was close.
Yep, you nailed it.
But
that though, I think would be that's another thing to explore. Having the dry suit and maybe self bailing and getting in. You could go. You're carrying a 5 to 7 pound raft. You could go 10, 12 miles to a spot.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if you're going to put in your raft and you're going to float to a pickup point somewhere down the line, why not have a dry suit?
And you're looking at, let's say your elk is 250 pounds of load to 200. You can carry a 5 pound raft, 20 miles in. But think about packing out 200 pounds of meat versus floating out 200 pounds of meat.
Right.
Totally different.
Oh, man.
You can get into some areas guys just aren't going to go.
Yep, 100%.
So I'm sold.
Bought and sold on those things. They're great. It's just, I'm envisioning, like, even just with a family this summer, floating the Missouri, man, you can do a lot when you can, they're tiny boats, but when you have the ability to put all your gear, all your camping gear, your shelter, camping stuff, whatever is inside your boat, now you're just like free floating down with nothing in your boat. You have, everybody in your family in one of those. You can make a pretty special trip floating down a big river.
There are some rivers that we came across, different rivers. Some where it was like just a breezy raft all the way down, and then there was some parts where it was like class 5 rapids, like,
and that's a good
the Congo
piece of advice. Like, don't just expect the river's going to be good all the way down.
You got to know your river.
You want to do your scouting. Scout ahead. If you can't see around a corner, you got a quick turn coming. Best play it safe and scout ahead if you haven't floated it before. No doubt, you could get yourself in a world of hurt if you're just going willy nilly blind down a river you've never been down.
Yeah, you could die. You can die. Speaking of that, life jackets.
Yep.
So we didn't pack them.
Nope.
Didn't bring life jackets. And of course, there'll be people that criticize that decision.
For sure.
What's your take on that?
Well, I think all of us have determined we're pretty dang good swimmers. The river we were crossing a lot wasn't that deep. Never in a spot where if you did fall out that you wouldn't be able to hit bottom, not very far down, and get yourself to shore. So yeah, it was just extra weight. Now, I mean, you could go both ways. We probably should have brought them, but we didn't. We didn't want to pack the weight. But still, even without them, I'm 100% confident I'm going to be able to get myself to shore in this particular river.
And with your waders and a belt on, you're going to have some buoyancy as well, unless you hit your head,
Sure. Well, and yeah, even if the raft popped, your big seat pad that you're sitting on
is inflated.
Is totally inflated as well. You got two things going for you there, so you hop on that and float down a ways.
Yeah, it's a calculated risk.
It is. It is a risk, no doubt about it. I'm not saying there isn't any.
I'm not saying anybody should
do
do it the way we
probably
did
say
it.
we're idiots. Maybe that's the case, but you also cross slippery logs.
Yeah, Ryan thinks I'm an idiot all the time.
That you shouldn't. You could just easily find another route, but Brian sees a log going across a river 5-6 feet up off of it. He just has to get up on that log and run across it, even though it's slick as all get out. And I say don't take that risk.
Right.
Brian seems to want to take that risk.
There's something, it goes back to the no life jacket. It's a calculated risk. But it is a risk. And to me, individuals should have the liberty to choose what risks they want to accept, you know?
Yep.
And that's a personal choice. There are people who are dead set. They're never going to get into the water without a jacket on.
Yep.
And I feel like to each their own. I'm not suggesting anyone cross a slippery log like I do.
Yeah.
I also am like not going to stop. So
8 miles from a trailhead, and there goes Brian, like he slips, he's breaking an ankle. But no, calculated risk for sure. I would probably err on the side of caution, telling people just bring a life jacket
Yeah.
if you're at all worried about it.
That's what I'm looking at next and all of it costs money too. And so the next thing is, I'm kind of debating between the super small raft that has that self-bailing and dry suit life jacket kind of combo versus the bigger raft. For a bear hunt and a deer hunt, the Caribou is perfect.
Yeah.
For an elk hunt and bigger game, you're going to need an Explorer or a mule.
Yeah, because I think, I'm in that Caribou. I think I tap out at 400. 400 pounds, I think, is its limit. Whereas the mule, I think, is 5. So, yeah, you're pushing the limit. Yet I've heard them say those
conservative
numbers
limits.
are conservative. Yeah.
Still.
But with an elk, that's beyond your gear, yourself, and an elk. Caribou is not the raft for you.
No way. That last crossing I did that had, hide, skull, the entire bear, and my whole camp in it. The boat did not act the same. And my rifle, my optics, like everything was in there in that crossing. So I don't know how much of a load I really had, but it was.
Yeah. And one thing I figured out too is how you set your load in the boat. One time I had a bunch of my gear just kind of like pushed to the middle. And then I had a big hunk of meat in the back. I didn't have enough up front because my pack was nothing. I had my pack set. There was nothing there. So I was way too back heavy. Yeah. The next time I made sure all my gear was pushed to the very front and I had that meat sack somewhat in the back. And that was fine. That was perfect. It had enough weight up front to where I was feeling very balanced.
I found on my last crossing where I had a full bear skull and everything in there, I scooted way forward so I was halfway between the front and the back of the boat, and it steered better for me. It handled better for me.
Well, and that goes back to, remember the questions we were getting is like, why is Lampers on his knees? And you're supposed to sit on your butt. I will argue that I am way more like effective on my knees in the middle of that raft to the front of that raft. I'm just more sharp, like clean. I can cut faster, quicker decisions. When you're in the back, not as quick. It's different. More comfortable when you're sitting on your butt and you don't have the threat of whacking your knee on a rock, obviously.
Yeah, and if you're not in some major rapids.
But you could also be kneeling on that blow-up pad, which we had this time, which we didn't use on our prior trip. And you have that. And look, I'm not, I would be on my knees preferably as far as like tight cuts, rocks. I would just be on my knees.
Well, I dug my feet into the front of the boat. Up under it and then scooted all the way to the middle. So I was just barely on the edge of the seat pad. And I was able to turn and twist and move that boat so much better than when I was sitting all the way back in the boat.
Yep.
It just felt great as I shot through. But the load was lighter though, but it's still heavy, still a heavy load. So full bear and a little bit of gear. But all in all, game changer.
Yeah.
Really neat piece of gear.
In love with that alpaca raft, no doubt. It's great. And again, it's even just not for hunting, but high lake fishing in places you want to bomb 10 miles in, 5-pound, really nice raft. You can put all your gear in, bomb to the other side of a lake. It is just money for that kind of stuff. Yep. And Montana's got big rivers that you can float. So
we're really honing in the kit too, because with that new Weatherby rifle, the Backcountry TI, your total setup with your bipod is around
6.5 to 6 3/4 with the bipod. I run that Spartan Precision bipod. It's really lightweight. But yeah, I'm well under 6.5 with the scope and that 4.9 pound Weatherby. So it is beyond impressive.
So that changes everything because
I love it.
You can't hardly tell you're carrying a rifle anymore.
No, it beats my prior setups where, there's a couple extra pounds there. So no, it's a great way to shave.
I want to lighten up my scope, go with the lighter VX 3-line lightweight Leupold scope, throw that on there, upgrade my bipod to something a little lighter. I love the bipod I have, which is a Harris bipod, and it's the miniature, lightest weight, the one they have, but it's still heavy.
It is heavy, yeah.
So switching up the scope and the bipod will get me that lighter weight deal. I'll shave 6 ounces off the weight of my scope because I have the VX6 right now, and it's a great scope. I have a lot of room to dial, and I can take some longer range shots with that, but we don't shoot anything like this trip. nothing was over 250.
Every stock is how do we get inside of 300?
Yeah.
That's the goal. And once we get there, we feel like we did our job.
And even we talked about wolves, coming on some wolves. You want to have a little more range, take a shot at a wolf. But I still have quite a bit of range with the VX3 line. I just don't have the same minutes of adjustment like I do with the 6. But I'm going to go ahead and it's not worth the extra 6 ounces for that for me. So I'm going to do that. And then one other piece of kit that you have that I'm looking into is the Slick tripod, which is a cheap tripod.
Yeah, it's only like $225, something like that. I don't know.
And you have a Manfrotto head.
Manfrotto head, yep.
Which is also super light.
The whole setup is light. I wish I could tell you how many ounces it is altogether, but I just don't have those numbers. But it's great. And I've ran that Slick for the last few years. I don't think they make the 624 anymore. I think it's like a 634 or something different. But no, great carbon tripod. Because worth packing.
James has a sweet Gitzo Traveler tripod, which I have a Gitzo as well, but it's a one size bigger. And I used to run a heavier, bigger video camera for these hunts and stuff. Now I have a lighter weight setup. It just needs to hold the 400 millimeter lens and then my spotter. And that's where I think I'm going to try out the Slick. And that head was real light on that Manfrotto.
It was super light. Yep, I was running a Benro, and it was a little heavier.
So that's what I've got is a Benro, and it's light. It's lighter than as light as the Outdoorsman.
Yeah. Yep. I haven't tried the Outdoorsman. Looks like a good system. Expensive, though.
Expensive, and I don't know that head is a fluid head. The ones I've used weren't fluid. I think they do have a fluid head though, but bulletproof.
Yep.
But that's another area I can shave some weight there. But otherwise, we're approaching the limits. It seems like of what you can.
Well, you know what, Brian? Like every year, for the last 10 years, I've thought, well, I can't really get any lighter than this. And then some titanium stove comes out with a 1.5 pound shelter that sleeps 2 dudes with the shelter with the stove, and you're like, wow.
We didn't really need the wood stove, but it was damp in the morning, so we did bring it the first week.
Oh, James and I were taking full advantage of the wood stove because we'd get up in the morning, I'd roll over, light the fire, everything, all the condensation is gone, we'd burn it up.
And you have the U-turn titanium stove, and you have the Cimarron tent.
It's hard not to pack that U-turn
That's
stove.
Like 2.5 pounds for the whole setup.
Yeah, super light.
It's unreal because it camps both you guys with a fire.
Right. Yeah, it was awesome.
I mean, it's lighter than your so-called lightweight, little coffin tents that you typically get at the store.
And a huge advantage was when we were up in that little snowpack is, James and I could just set our Jetboil cups full of snow, running our wood stove, and we'd end up with all the water we wanted. We wouldn't have to burn up our fuel.
It is comforting too, because if you run out of fuel, you can't always just rely on the stove, your wood stove instead, to heat up some water, cook some of those meals. I felt like the kit's getting light enough. So some people wonder about the miles that we cover, and then you're packing out an entire animal. But once you eat your 6 days of food or 5 days of food, whatever you brought, that's 10 or 12 pounds. But when your base kit is as light as it is, like it has been for us, and you empty all your water bladders, so you're not carrying that. And it's doable to pack out a full animal, whether it be a deer or a bear, all in one pack with your camp. It's heavy, but we've proven we can do it. We can hike from morning till dark.
Us old guys can do it. I mean, we're getting up there, Brian. We can do it. I think most people should be able to one trip.
James was talking to me on the day before. He's like, "Man, you guys have 2 bears, 3 guys, and we are so far from camp, plus our camp."
And the camera.
And I was like, "We're fine." And James turned to me and he's like, "You're awful cheerful about."
It's like, why aren't you more pessimistic?
And it turned out fine, huh?
It was fine. Yeah, we just ground it out.
Yeah, for sure.
One of those long pack outs.
Now, I'm just going to throw this out there because I know you've talked about how lousy you think my AirPad is, Brian. And
I should talk about that.
Right? So I know he's thrown me under the bus about me having a crappy AirPad. So I run that big Agnes. And it just so happens that Mr. Call here bought one from REI, and it didn't have the valve in it.
Yeah, I slept I got the narrow one.
So
and it had a valve.
Garbage.
And I used it in the living room, and I'm like, this sucks because my shoulders hang off. the side. So I went and traded it in for the wide one and got to the mountain, and it had no valve.
No valve.
And I'm like, okay, I'm going back to, plus it was cold. That was my biggest thing is yours isn't as insulated. On this hunt, it doesn't matter.
Sure.
And I think it doesn't matter up through October, generally.
Yeah. And I think everybody's different. Obviously, I must sleep hot because I don't feel cold at all with that pad. Yeah. I don't know. We used it in the fall.
Oh, dude.
Minus temps. I just don't feel cold from the ground up at all.
When that thing lays on the snow, I feel cold through it like that.
So Brian ends up going back to his old tried and true
Thermarest. Neo Air.
How's that?
It's insulated. It's
How's
R4.
That going for you?
Dang, man. I got 3 holes in it on this trip. And the first time I'm laying there and it just air comes out. And I'm like pissed off because I'm cursed lately. So I get out and I find the hole. I'm getting really good at finding holes in air pads and patch it with tenacious tape. And then I got another slow leak hole on a few nights later. I patched that one. And the third one, that one really ticked me off. Every 3 days or 4 days, I got a hole in it. Yeah. And patched it. And that one I patched in the middle of the night. I also had 2 ticks crawl across my face a few hours apart.
So he's got ticks across his face and a half-inflated air pad.
The first tick was like crawling by my eyeball, and I'm in a dead sleep, and I just was like, I woke up instantly, and of course, you're on tick alert. Yeah. And I'm pretty light sleeper, with that kind of thing. Like I see people get tickled by a feather or whatever, and they just snooze right through it.
That'd be me.
I'm not like that, man. I wake up and I felt that sensation on my face, and I grabbed it with my fingers, and then I held it between my fingers because I wanted to know if it was a tick or an ant. It matters, right, James?
It does matter.
It matters.
Ants smash easily. Ticks don't.
Yeah, they're tough.
Not with your fingers.
And I did try to smash it, and it wasn't smashing. And so then I'm fumbling for the headlamp, and it takes me forever to find it. And then I drop it on the mattress and I shine the light on. Sure enough, it's a tick. So I smash it between 2 little rocks and go back to bed. And about, an hour or 2 later, just repeat the same thing. Another one on my face. I'm like, I got a lot on me this time.
Yeah, both you and James.
I was less than Brian, though.
Yeah.
I think Brian was more the tick magnet, and he kind of drew them from us. But you guys know my theory on that, how I let somebody go before me.
Right.
So they attach to the
James
person.
James never takes the lead on the trail. He always lets the guy in front either get the rattlesnake jump or the ticks off the brush.
James is a smart fella.
You got it. Yeah. That's exactly right.
He's quiet, but he's always thinking, what's going to protect me?
Last year, I was like, I let Lampers bushwhack a few things because those trees are covered in ticks. And as soon as you
it's when you get down into the scrubby bottom, like creek beds.
And you're always picking a game trail.
Yeah.
And so then you're weaving your way on a game trail. Well, other animals are doing the same thing, and those ticks just wait right there.
Yep.
And land on stuff.
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't know what it was that hippie grease, whatever it was on me, because
Ryan never seems to get any.
Got a tick.
I put permethrin on our pants, and but just from the pants. James put it on his tops too.
Yeah, I put it all over pretty much.
And it definitely works.
It does. Yeah, I would recommend doing that.
I think the consensus was this time, James, you're going to probably spray down your backpack too, because it seemed like you guys were finding them on your packs a lot, and then they're probably coming off the pack onto your face.
Yeah, but there were a number you could tell were dying from the permethrin that had been on our pants or whatever.
If I wouldn't have said that permethrin causes like hormonal craziness,
James would have sprayed on
James
his
would
skin.
have been like rubbing it on like
like lotion.
Like lotion.
Yeah, let's put a disclaimer.
It
out
is
there.
dangerous stuff.
Yeah, you spray it on your clothes and then you have to let it dry so that because you don't want it on your skin or anything like that. But
can mess with you.
Yeah.
But it is effective.
But Lyme disease is nothing to, I did spray my ground cloth. The whole edge got soaked and let it dry. And I did notice a couple of times I had dead ticks like
on the edge
of the.
We found that too. Like inside the tent, we found them and like, man, is it dead? And we pick it up, set it on something.
On the stove.
Just never came back to life on the stove, but it wasn't going.
No, it was not going.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Turned out.
yeah, that's just another one of those.
but overall, I think, Brian, you need to go back to one of the old foam Z-pads.
So I'm using a ground cloth that's the Seek Outside. It's a real thin,
It's like a tarp.
lighter weight material, and I love it because it's so big and it doesn't weigh anything, and it does keep the water off. But it's not very puncture resistant. So a little tiny thing can poke through, but you're using the same ground cloth and have been and never had a hole.
Unless you're using a high quality item like my Big Agnes Q-Core air pad, you're probably going to have holes in your thermarest.
I don't know. I'm gonna go back to the drawing board because that's too many holes. But I noticed that my first Neo Air, which I had for more than eight years, I beat the crap out of it. You know, guys, I don't take care of anything. So
Yes.
James is like, yes, your camera gear makes me weep. But it truly does trash. Like I beat it up. And so what I noticed though was the newer Thermarest has a much thinner shell than my old one. My old one was really crinkly and loud.
Right.
Like every time you moved, like everyone would wake up because they're so loud. But I did not.
They probably started making it in China.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
I think so. I don't know. All I know is it's not like the old one because it's got 4 holes.
Yeah.
Three holes? 3 holes.
Yeah, it would seem like every couple of days you'd have some kind of problem with that air mattress.
And it was like just the tiniest little slit. And it just got me feeling like the mattress just isn't tough enough.
Yeah.
For what we're doing. I need something with that can just handle a little bit of sharp.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe it's just a thicker ground cloth.
But I don't want a baby with a ground cloth either. Like,
sure.
I need something because I'm
notice
also a stout man with a lot of butt muscle, and I sit on that.
I was running without a ground cloth and no holes.
Yeah, I noticed
I've
that.
seen that.
That's why I was like, it's either that or I go with an airless mattress.
Right.
Which is tempting.
Foam. Yep.
But it's so not comfortable.
I'd hate to go back to that.
I'll check out the Q-Core again. And then I'll probably still use the Neo Air when it's super cold.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard, we
the
were
X-Therm
talking about X-Therm sounds
good.
like a legit one. It's expensive though too. But again, I have not had, some folks have had problems with that Big Agnes. I've yet to have one, so I'm just going to keep using the same one that's working for me.
Yeah.
Once it fails, maybe I'll go with something else, but so far so good.
I did want to talk about one more thing, and that is, you're what, 49?
46, dude. Come on now.
You're
right there with me.
We're getting older, and yet, this trip, the miles each day, get a good night's rest, wake up. Yep. I feel great. I feel really good. And especially after a long hike with heavy loads, you'd think today you'd be wrecked, but you're not. What is the key to your success right now? I mean, it can't just be one thing, but
I think it's a bunch of things. Obviously folks know I'm living the CBD life.
Yeah.
I take a lot of CBD. I tripled the doses some days back there.
I'm going to try
on these trips. And I've had great luck. I just feel good, especially noticed when I'm beating the snot out of myself, on the mountains, which is when you become inflamed for the most part. But again, I think for me, I think you and I do this a lot. So we're conditioned to these long days, hard, heavy loads. I think over time, anybody's going to condition to that.
Yeah.
And just, there's no knee pain or ankle fatigue or foot pain, anything like that anymore. I used to have that for sure. But true or not, I used to think, my conclusion was when I got into my late 30s was I was starting to get all that stuff, swelling, knee pain. It was taking me 6 weeks post my last November mule deer hunt to recover to where I felt normal.
Yeah.
That's just too long. And so I cut sugar out as much as I could, Obviously there's sugars and everything. I do these fruit leather things that I make and, anything, cookies with peanut butter and coconut, shredded coconut, all this. There's sugars in there, adding a little honey. But just cheap candy bars, whatever, gummies, that kind of stuff. I've just cut that out, and I feel like
refined sugars.
Anything I can do to eliminate inflammation during, and post trip, are just going to help me in the long run. And it seems to be working because, I mean, you know what we did yesterday?
Yep.
That was a marathon with a ton of weight and a lot of obstacles in between. And today I feel like
I
could go do another 10 days.
When we packed down for a second leg of our trip, we had to go back out this morning early and get more stuff at the bottom of this. We have this climb that's ridiculous.
Yep.
A couple areas that are just heavy climbs. And so in that case, we just lightened the load a little bit. And this morning we woke up and went down there and I felt fresh as could be. And
felt
this
like
is
day one.
after like 11 days.
Yeah, absolutely.
12 days. So
yep.
For me, I think calcium, I take the Shift calcium. It's always worked really well for me. And it's something I definitely need. I tested not having it and having it, and it's dramatic for me. I think that's what goes back to each individual tweaking and figuring themselves out. I use CBD oil, and I just for a couple months, and although my joints felt good, I also felt a little anxiety.
Yeah.
And so
and that's the thing. It's like a lot of people take CBD to get less anxiety. Mm-hmm. Some people get a little more. It's really weird how it works. Like it's different with it's unique to each person's body for sure. So.
It just maybe your gut bacteria or how you metabolize things. I want to mess around because I've heard different dosages.
I used to do 20 milligrams daily and then ramp it up to 40 on a trip. Now I'm doing like 80 on a trip. 75, 80 to 100 sometimes in a day. And that's working for me. So,
well, there's no doubt the inflammation isn't the soreness isn't what it has been in the past. And I think I also do fish oil when we're up there.
Yep.
And I think that really helps me. But then
vitamin C is to do a lot of vitamin C. I mean, throughout the year, not just on these trips, but throughout the year.
I take zinc and iron and a few other things. I take the time, vitamin D, for 4,000 IUs, I think is what it is I'm taking.
Yep.
And all these things I think those kind of supplements help. And then in addition to that, I'm eating sweet potatoes and apples that I've ground up and made into leathers. I'm eating straight up bananas, dried mangoes, dried apples. I'm eating Heather's Choice buckwheat for breakfast. I'm eating I ate a lot of salmon chowders for dinner, you know.
Yep.
I did eat some ramen once, twice.
He's addicted.
Thanks to James.
You ate a couple bites of James. Dude. James packed Spam, so he got Brian to take a little nibble on some Spam.
I've never eaten Spam in my life, and I had some Spam, and it was actually really good.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
But what I'm thinking, though, is I liked the noodles, especially after a hard day's work. My appetite wanes because I think I'm just so exhausted. That what I really would like are just some broth. So that bone broth that you brought,
right,
with some rice noodles or some real decent noodles would be money.
Dude, that bone broth is my new favorite addition to my diet on the hill.
Yeah,
no doubt about it. I was chucking little single serving packets to James a bunch, and like there's a cream of mushroom packet. Which I think James liked quite a bit.
It was really good.
And then there's a chicken bone broth. There's a beef bone broth. And man, each one has 10 grams of protein in it.
Yeah.
It's just so
we talked about that on
good.
the other episode, but it's worth repeating because that Lono Life. You told me that I can get 10% off.
Yes, you can.
If I use the code Stealthy
10. Yeah.
Stealthy
10.
Stealthy 10.
That's
so
good.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to help a brother out, use that code, and get me some. But I'm also going to make my own. I have all these bear bones.
Yep.
I've made it out of bear. I've got a bunch of moose still. And I like to cut it on the chop saw.
Right.
Miter saw. Just zin, 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 zin into donuts. And about an inch or so. and then just drop those rounds in a
crock pot
or an
some
Instapot,
vegetables and Instapot. Yep.
and just render that thing down forever.
Yep.
And
A couple days. Yeah. That's definitely the way to do it. And we do the same thing. And then you run out and you're bummed.
Yeah, it doesn't last very long because you slurp it down.
Chug through it. And my girls love it. And we add a little Redmond sea salt in there as well. Just makes it really good. But like for example, this trip, I brought those packets, and I was fully expecting, and I just never did, to kind of boil up some of the bear meat with the cream and mushroom packet. I just didn't do it. But
if you'd have fried up that bear meat, dropped it in the cream of mushroom.
Yeah, what a good soup you'd have on the mountain. So, no, it's healthy for you. It's good for your gut. I think it's the perfect little snack for on the mountain myself.
Have you ever dehydrated any of that?
No.
So is it better to freeze dry it?
The broth?
How do you do the broth?
That's a good question. I don't know exactly what their process is.
Seems like freeze-dried would be
I would assume so.
Ideal.
I mean, you get that when you dehydrate soups, but it would take a lot to get the powder.
It's almost all water. Mm-hmm. And then what would you might be losing? I don't know.
I'm not sure. I'm guessing freeze-dried.
We're looking at a freeze-dry machine here in the near future, so I can kind of do some of these things my way.
Yep, absolutely. No, so to answer your question, I think diet is huge. It's just one of the biggest points to, when you're in your 40s, late 40s, anti-inflammation, everything, and just never stopping the grind, always keeping your body fit enough to pack weight and pack it far.
I think some people think about the pain or the discomfort. It doesn't cross my mind anymore. It's not like a thing.
No, I don't get any of that anymore. The only thing that stops me is the heat. The only thing that stops me is like overheating, sweating too much where I know I'm going to pay the price if I don't slow down or stop, take a break.
Yeah, I'm not like that. I can go without water a long time too. Heat, I've always loved heat and thrive in hot hikes and things like that. Cold makes me demotivated. I can do it, but I'm demotivated.
Yeah, that's another thing. After yesterday's massive ordeal of getting that meat out, it was so bloody hot, and you're spent, right? I decided to go jump in the river, icy cold river, and felt great. Feels awesome, get all the scuzz off. And, but then you get out and your body's in kind of a shock.
Yep.
And I was like, we still have some stuff to do. We still got a hill, but man, I felt like going to sleep. Mm-hmm. I was just toast at that point. After that icy cold dip, I was done.
Yeah. They say
motivated.
Post workout, or before bed, like the Wim Hof thing. They often recommend, you take the coldest, like Rob Wolf from the Paleo Solution. He a big proponent of when you're getting ready to go to sleep, take an ice cold plunge. As soon as you dry off, you're in such a state of relaxation, you fall asleep right away. Yeah. It completely changes the nervous system into utter relaxation. Right. So there you did this cold water dip and it was time to sleep.
It was time to sleep completely. I did not feel like going any further, but of course we had to. But
you felt a difference.
Oh yeah. No, I felt like, dang, before I did that, I just felt like a gross, sweaty mess, but still drive to keep pushing. Mm-hmm. But then, submerging into that cold water all naked.
Sucked just something out.
Done. Yeah. Yeah. He's done for the day. And I was telling you a story, there's an Exo Death hike a few years back, and the guys did that. They came off of this super piping hot hill, and they jumped in at the bottom before they ascended the other side, and that's where all heck broke loose. Guys started getting sick, overheating, their bodies shut down. Yeah. And they're kind of figuring it was because of that cold plunge at the bottom before they took that big hike up the other side. Their bodies are just in a state of shock. Yeah. So no good. Learned my lesson on that one.
Well, folks, I hope this was useful to you. We could go on forever, but we all got to get home.
Yep.
This will be the end of this kind of bear hunt series, although we might revisit some of the pieces of it, because one thing that Ryan I've never seen anyone better is glassing. James, like we talked about this, I'm pretty good. When I stack myself up against other people behind the glass, not because I'm gifted or talented naturally.
You've done it a lot.
I just am well practiced.
Right.
I'm out here a lot. I'm fortunate to be able to do that, but I don't hold a candle to Ryan. Like, nobody I've ever met is like this.
He always outglasses everybody. That's kind of the reason I don't glass much. It's kind of nice. I just sit there and like, when you spot
What's
something,
the
tell
point?
me. Let me know
But
when
I
you
want to
see
be
something.
good when I'm not with Ryan.
Yeah.
And I'm competitive, so I just want to see one that Ryan doesn't see.
Exactly.
And be
True.
like, ha!
Every
look.
once in a while, you get one, right?
Yeah.
Well, I heard that last day that you guys had made this little agreement in the morning, like your goal for the day was to spot a bear before
That's
me.
right.
Yeah.
And I beat you to the punch, but you did spot the bear, but it doesn't count. You know why?
He's walking
Because,
out in the open.
Look, we had a target bear that I had spotted. We're heading towards the
kill
target
mode.
bear. I was
I'm
in kill mode.
I'm looking left and right.
Ryan's just looking around, and he sees another bear. It happened to be a little bit older age class bear.
It was a hard spot.
Yeah.
This big black dot in the middle of yellow grass.
So I lost that one, but I was fully I had a target on the other side of the mountain. I wasn't looking to the left.
Well, and then my second bear, I spotted that one too. And that was, again, just I happened to look in the right spot at the right moment. I'm like, hey, there's a bear. And you all thought I was joking or something at first. I'm like, no, right there.
Yep.
How big is he? And then as we're on the stalk, Ryan's like, how dare you spot a bear before me? Because it's so tough. And literally we'll be there and I'll find something like an elk or a deer in a pocket or, for example, a sow with cubs. Ryan will have known that's there for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It just didn't bother telling me,
Yeah. I think I already saw that.
Yeah. And there's also that one. Did you see that one? You're like, oh, dang it.
There's another
sucker.
group over on that side.
Yeah. But I said this when I got back from the mule deer hunt. I was talking to my buddy Anthony and I was like, yeah, it's frustrating with Ryan because we glass a hill and in 3 to 4 minutes, he's like, there's 25 deer on that slope. And I'm like, okay, I see 5. And I keep looking. Okay, I'm up to 12. Okay, I got to 17. What the hell? Like, how do you? And it's taken me 40 minutes to pick them out. So I don't know what that's about, man. I don't. Have you always been that way, or is this just from so much practice?
I think it's just years of practice, I guess. I don't know. I've got good vision. I don't have contacts. I don't wear glasses. And
He has good vision, yeah.
Farsighted. So I don't know. No idea, but
he glasses a lot too. Like when other people are taking a break, he's glasses intensely.
Yeah.
Like
it's kind of like I think logically there's got to be a reason, but it's kind of like fishing. Like you can't catch anything unless you're worms in the water. Yeah. But if you guys are sleeping. Right. Well, if James and Brian are sleeping,
we take one nap.
That blown beauty just rolls over the mountain, and we don't see him.
That's true.
That did happen. My eyes were on the mountain.
Yeah.
So I think it's just having eyes on the mountain.
We knew you were watching, so what was the point?
That's exactly right.
Nap time. No, but I have noticed that is a difference between, for example, your mule deer you took last year on our mule deer series. It was at the end of the day. All of us had been diligent from morning till dark. Like there's not much time where we're not behind the glass.
Yeah.
And that I think is rare. Having hunted with a lot of people, they just can't stay from morning till dark in the optics the whole time.
Right.
But you're just looking for that one glimpse. And sure enough, just before dark, that giant buck was there.
Shows himself.
And you spotted him, just a little dot.
Yep.
Got the spotter on him, and he turned out to be a beautiful buck.
Yep.
And the whole hunt changes. Now, if you're
could
not
have easily been unseen where he was.
Absolutely.
Like
that's what I mean. That's what I'm getting at.
That you don't typically even look across, right?
So the success, there is a lot around the success that you experience that has to do with just spotting game. Mm-hmm. Like it's under your nose. It doesn't really get away from you. If it's on a mountain or in a drainage, you're going to see it. And there's not that many people that are that good.
Right. And his persistence and climbing mountains, and he just never stops.
I've seen Dustin Rowe be like that, and a few people. It's a fun challenge and skill to hone,
Yeah, it's cool to watch for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's fun to have Ryan in camp.
Yeah,
for that
100%. Yeah.
Oh, did you see that buck right there? No, I did not.
The only bummer
is it my turn to tag out? All right.
Yeah, you're always going to get some kind of death march at the end.
Yeah.
I've never been on a trip with Ryan where it's like,
I don't care about that.
It's great. It is. It's awesome. It adds to the adventure of it, but you just better expect it going in. And if you're not really prepared for a hunt with Ryan, you could, you're probably not going to have very much fun.
I like that. That's why I don't like, there's very few guys I like to hunt with, because when we spot a bear or a deer or a target, I don't have to debate with Ryan if we're going to go for it or not.
Oh yeah, there is no debating.
If we shoot it at last light and it takes us till 4 a.m. to get it done, like, no problem.
Yeah, that's not even
He's
a
all
question.
in.
Yeah,
I'm all in. I like that because that changes your success so much.
Yeah.
Every little opportunity matters on these type trips. No doubt about it. Yep.
And a lot of times you're with someone who's like, yeah, I'd rather, let's go for it tomorrow, see if we can relocate it. What happens if we shoot it and then it's dark and we got to navigate through these mountains in the pitch black, and it's like, you just do it.
Yeah, you think about that after you get the animal down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's just the argument for being fit. It's why you do CrossFit. It's like, you don't want anything like, no distance is too far, no hole that you're going to run down, or no elevation drop. You don't want any of that to matter. None of that should matter. You're just going to do it, no matter what it is. If anything stops you from going down there, that's a problem. It's going to just take away from those opportunities. So.
When your bear had that 200-foot free fall, and it landed like practically in cliffs and on straight up and down rock slides.
Horrible spot.
Horrible.
Yeah.
And getting in there sucked, and getting out, and then climbing 2,000 feet up to the ridge so we could hit camp and then get out.
That was no joke.
That right there would be enough for most. Well, most guys wouldn't even attempt it, but there are few that would. They wouldn't be able to do that day after day after day. Right. And that's one thing I'm proud of, is that I don't, because maybe it's diet, sleep, like the whole package, the fitness,
mental,
but I don't have to like force myself to push through the pain. The reality is there's not that much pain with it anymore. It's like, it's not that miserable like it used to be.
Just got to grit your teeth and do it, and it might suck a little bit, but all that is forgotten as soon as you're back to camp.
And you're eating deep fried bear meat with
For sure.
Absolutely. Well, guys, it was a pleasure.
Oh man, what a trip. Unreal.
I had a great time.
Couldn't have like had any more expectations or hopes than what just happened on this one.
It's going to be a fun film series to get out. I hope people check it out and watch that, because it was just a real beautiful place to be, and I love bears, love bear hunting. I hope this gets more and more people excited to do it, and it can be as big of an adventure as you want it to be.
You can treat bear hunting like an afternoon glassing session, or you can go as expedition style as you want.
Yep.
And that's what we like to do. It's just a lot of fun.
Yep. All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. Check out Ryan at Stealthy Hunter and Hunt Harvest Health. And James over at, what is it, Sly?
_Sly _Sylvester.
_Sly, SLY _Sylvester.
Yeah. James Sylvester.
Yeah, check that out. And thanks for tuning in, friends. Stay gritty.